Isaiah Washington, at 38 years old, understood the architecture of complex systems. He knew how data flowed, where stress points emerged, and how a single, flawed command could cascade into total system failure. He made his living, a life he presented to the world as earning a respectable $135,000 a year, designing the invisible frameworks that held up the modern world. But on Saturday, at 8:17 p.m., in the living room of their $3.2 million Cherry Creek loft that his wife believed was a high-end rental, he was witnessing a different kind of system failure, his own. Nia stood before him, a vision of calculated perfection. Her hair, a cascade of elegant locks, was swept into an artful updo that had cost $400 that afternoon. She was wearing a new dress, a sleek black Burberry sheath that clung to her form, a $2,400 garment she'd bought for an occasion he now understood was this exact moment. On her wrist, a diamond tennis bracelet, a $15,000 anniversary gift from him last year, caught the light from the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Denver skyline. He was still in the clothes he'd worn all day, a simple gray $45 Henley and a pair of well-worn $80 Levi's. On his wrist was the same $89 Timex watch he'd worn for a decade, its leather strap softened with age. He had just finished loading the $2,000 Miele dishwasher after the simple salmon and asparagus dinner he'd cooked. He thought they were going to watch a movie on their $7,000 Samsung frame television. He was wrong. "We need to talk," she had said, her voice devoid of its usual warmth. And then came the single flawed command that would bring everything crashing down. "Isaiah, this isn't working anymore," she said, her tone as sterile as a boardroom negotiation. "I'm 35. I've given you 2 years. I need more. I need a man with real money." She paused, letting the words hang in the air between them, thick and suffocating. "You're a good man, but you're not enough." The words struck him not with heat, but with a sudden, shocking cold. Real money. He looked at her, at the woman he had married, the woman who had no idea that the little computer job he went to every day was as the founder and CEO of InfraSense AI, a company that had, just last week, quietly closed a Series C funding round that valued it at $200 million. He looked at her and felt the profound, dizzying chasm between the life she saw and the life he actually lived. He had kept it from her, a strategic decision in a world of noise and distraction, wanting to build something real before he revealed its scale. He thought it was a test of character, a way to know he was loved for the man he was, not the numbers in a bank account. He had his answer. The system had failed. What Naya didn't know was that this conversation wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of a consequence cascade she could never have anticipated. And Isaiah, the quiet architect of systems, was about to watch it all unfold with the calm, devastating precision of a man who understood exactly how things fall apart. Have you ever felt completely underestimated? Like someone looked right through you and missed everything that mattered? Let us know in the comments. And stick around to see how a quiet man's silence can become the loudest sound in the room. The facade of their life together had been meticulously constructed, mostly by Naya, and paid for quietly by Isaiah. He had played the part of a man stretching his upper middle-class salary to its limits, a performance he now realized was a critical mistake. He thought it was a game, a way to keep their foundation real. For her, it was a source of constant, simmering resentment. Their arguments, which had become more frequent over the last 6 months, were almost always about money. They were micro-dramas of financial contrast. A trip to Whole Foods on a Tuesday evening would become a battleground. Isaiah would be in the dairy aisle, comparing the $4.99 organic, grass-fed milk to the $3.29 store brand, a habit ingrained from leaner years. Does it really matter? Naya would ask, her voice tight with annoyance. She'd be leaning against the cart, her $200 Louis Vuitton Neverfull bag perched on a pile of artisanal cheeses and imported olives that had already pushed the bill over $150. It's $2, Isaiah. It all adds up, he'd say, putting the cheaper milk in the cart. It was a lie, of course. The $2 meant nothing to him, but the principle, the character of the man he was pretending to be, had to be consistent. He had to be the man who watched his budget, who thought about every dollar. Her sigh was always his reward, a sound of pure, unadulterated disappointment. Domestic normalcy was a stage for these quiet humiliations. He remembered a Saturday 3 months prior. They were discussing a vacation. He, with genuine enthusiasm, had laid out a plan for a week-long trip to Telluride. He had priced out a beautiful cabin rental for $2,500, calculated gas for his 2012 Toyota Camry with 187,000 miles on it, and budgeted for food and lift tickets. The total cost was around $4,000. We could hike, ski, just relax by the fire, he'd proposed, proud of the thoughtful, affordable luxury he'd planned. Nia hadn't even looked at the brochure he'd printed. She was scrolling through her phone, her thumb moving in a series of angry little flicks. She turned the screen toward him. It was a photo of her friend, a woman named Chloe, posing on an infinity pool's edge, a turquoise ocean stretching out behind her. "This is Chloe in the Maldives," Nia said, her voice flat. "Her husband took her for her birthday. This resort costs $3,000 a night. Their whole trip was probably $25,000. She looked up from the phone, her eyes meeting his. "I want that, Isaiah. I don't want a cozy cabin. I want the world. And you keep offering me a backyard." He had no answer for that. He just nodded, the quiet architect absorbing another data point of system stress. He saw the luminous glow of her deep brown skin, a beauty that had once captivated him, now seeming like a polished surface, reflecting only her own desires. Even gifts became a test he always failed. For her birthday, he'd bought her a beautiful, custom-made leather-bound journal from a local artisan, a $300 piece of craftsmanship, and a fountain pen that cost another $250. He thought it was personal, elegant. He imagined her filling it with her thoughts. She had smiled, a thin, brittle thing, and thanked him. The next day he saw it on her dresser, pushed behind a new bottle of $450 Chanel perfume she had bought for herself. A week later, she commented on another friend's Instagram post, a picture of a brand new Cartier Love bracelet. "Some girls have all the luck," she had written. The bracelet cost $7,350. The message was not subtle. He cooked, he cleaned, he fixed the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom with a $15 kit from Home Depot, because calling a plumber for $250 seemed wasteful for the character he was playing. He showed his love through acts of service, through quiet consistency. He was a man who remembered she liked her coffee with 1 raw sugar and a splash of oat milk. He was a man who made sure her white BMW 3 Series, the $43,000 car he'd bought her as a wedding gift, always had a full tank of gas. But these were currencies she no longer valued. Her love language was asset allocation, and his portfolio, as far as she could see, was severely underperforming. He had thought he was building a life on a foundation of character. He was wrong. He was building on sand, and the tide was her ambition. The silence in the loft after she left was absolute. The click of the door closing echoed in the vast, open-plan space. Isaiah stood motionless for a long time, listening to the hum of the Sub-Zero refrigerator, a $14,000 appliance she had insisted on. Her words replayed in his mind, not as an emotional outburst, but as a clean, final transaction. "I need a man with real money. You're not enough." She had already packed. A single, gleaming silver suitcase, a $3,000 Rimowa trunk, had been waiting by the door. She had planned this. This wasn't a fight. It was an extraction. She detailed her grievances with the precision of a prosecutor, his lack of drive, his contentment with his little job, how he was holding her back from the life she deserved, the life her friends were living. "Look at us, Isaiah," she'd said, gesturing around the beautifully furnished living room. "This is all for show. We're renting a lifestyle we can barely afford. I know what you make. I see your pay stubs. $135,000 in Denver doesn't buy you a future. It buys you a cage." It was a masterful piece of misdirection. He had purchased the loft outright for cash 2 years ago, before he met her, putting it in a trust to keep it off public record. The rent was a monthly transfer he made from his personal account to the trust's account, a piece of financial theater to maintain his cover. She mentioned a man named Marcus, a friend, who was a partner at a private equity firm. She spoke of his portfolio, his summer home in Aspen, his casual talk of market caps and leveraged buyouts. She didn't say she was leaving Isaiah for him, but the implication was clear. She was upgrading. She was trading in her reliable Toyota Camry for a Bugatti. "I just can't do this anymore," she concluded, her voice softening into a tone of faux pity. "I hope you understand. I need to be honest with myself about what I want." She picked up her suitcase. She did not look back. He walked over to the window and looked down at the street. A few minutes later, a black Mercedes G-Wagon, a $180,000 vehicle, pulled up to the curb. Nia emerged from the building and got into the passenger seat. The truck pulled away, disappearing into the city lights. He didn't feel anger. He didn't feel rage. He felt a profound, almost serene sense of clarity. It was the feeling he got when he finally isolated a bug in millions of lines of code. The problem had been identified. The flawed variable had been exposed. Now he just had to write the patch. He spent the rest of the night in silence, not drinking, not pacing, just sitting on the $12,000 Roche Beaubois sofa she had picked out. He thought about the last 4 years, the grueling 100-hour weeks, the stress of making payroll for his first 5 employees with money from his own savings, the sheer terror and exhilaration of building something from nothing, a complex and beautiful system that was now humming with quiet power. He had shielded her from all of it, thinking he was protecting her, protecting them. He saw now he was only protecting a fantasy. On Sunday morning at 9:43 a.m., an email arrived. It was a sterile, automated notification from an online legal service. A petition for dissolution of marriage had been filed in his name, Nia Washington versus Isaiah Washington. She hadn't even waited a full business day. The speed of it was the final, clarifying piece of data. There was no emotion here. This was a business decision. He closed his laptop. He walked into their bedroom, to the walk-in closet they shared. Her side was almost empty, a few unwanted dresses and shoes left behind like artifacts of a forgotten civilization. His side was neat, simple, a row of dark suits for board meetings, a stack of Henleys and jeans for his everyday life. He pulled out his phone and made a call, not to a friend but to his mother. His mother lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Aurora, the one he'd grown up in. It was filled with pictures of him and his late father, the scent of her cooking, and a warmth that no amount of money could buy. "Hey, Mama," he said, his voice steady. "Isaiah, baby. Everything all right?" She could always hear the things he didn't say. "Nia and I are having some trouble," he said, the understatement of the century. "She's staying with a friend for a while." "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry to hear that." She didn't pry. She didn't gossip. She was a woman of immense grace. "You remember what your father used to say? A person's character ain't what they show you in the sunshine. It's the tree that's left standing after the storm." He felt a wave of love and gratitude wash over him. "I remember, Mama." "You just handle your business, son," she said. The truth has a way of coming out. It always does. He hung up the phone. His mother was right. It was time to handle his business. The storm had passed, and he was the tree left standing. The next 48 hours were a study in strategic restraint. Isaiah operated with a chillingly calm efficiency, a man moving through the wreckage of his personal life as if it were a business problem to be solved. He walled off his emotions, compartmentalizing the hurt and betrayal into a locked room in his mind. There would be time for that later. Now was the time for action. On Monday morning, he received a clipped email from Naya. Isaiah, I've started the process. My lawyer will send over the paperwork. Let's just be adults about this and split everything down the middle. It'll be faster for everyone. Split everything down the middle. The irony was so thick he could taste it. She believed everything consisted of the $1,450 in their joint savings account, 2 used cars, and some expensive furniture. She had no idea she was proposing to split a rounding error. He typed a one-word reply, "Understood." He hit send and archived the conversation. He drove to the InfraSense headquarters in the Denver Tech Center, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that reflected the morning sun. He bypassed the company parking garage and used his private spot underneath the building, taking the executive elevator directly to the top floor. His office was a corner suite with panoramic views of the Rocky Mountains, a minimalist space dominated by a massive slab of reclaimed wood that served as his desk. It was his sanctuary, the place where the world made sense. His executive assistant, Maria, a sharp, fiercely loyal woman in her 50s, greeted him with a cup of black coffee, just the way he liked it. "Good morning, Isaiah. The Series C closing documents are on your desk for final signature. Bloomberg is confirmed for the feature tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Eastern." She paused, her gaze softening. "Is everything okay?" He was a private man, but his team knew him. They had been in the trenches with him for years. They could read his moods in the set of his jaw, the quiet in his eyes. "Personal matter, Maria," he said, "but I'm handling it." That was all she needed to hear. "Of course. Let me know if you need me to clear your schedule." "Actually," he said, "I do. I need a referral. To the best, most ruthless family law attorney in this city." Maria didn't blink. She simply nodded, made a note on her tablet, and said, "I'll have a name and an appointment for you within the hour." He spent the morning in back-to-back meetings, his mind a fortress of focus. He led a technical review of their new AI-driven predictive analysis engine, his questions sharp and insightful. He discussed Q4 hiring targets with his head of HR. To anyone watching, he was the picture of a CEO in complete command. No one could have guessed that his personal life was a smoldering ruin. Inside, he was running on a parallel track. While one part of his brain processed server loads and burn rates, the other was rehearsing a different kind of conversation, preparing for a different kind of negotiation. By 11 hours a.m., Maria had an appointment for him. 2 hours p.m. with a woman named Evelyn Reed. Her firm, Reed & Associates, was legendary. Her hourly billing rate was $200. "She is," Maria had said with a hint of admiration, "a shark in a Chanel suit." Perfect. He spent his lunch hour not eating, but sitting in his soundproofed office, looking out at the city. He thought about Naya's confidence, her casual dismissal of him. It wasn't just about the money. It was about ambition. She saw him as a man who had peaked, a salaried employee content with his lot. She had no concept of the kind of ambition it took to build something like InfraSense in secret, to defer gratification on a scale she couldn't comprehend. She saw the $89 Timex on his wrist and judged the man. She never thought to ask what he was building with the time it kept. He had made a critical mistake in thinking she would love the man over the mirage. Evelyn Reed's office in the Wells Fargo Center downtown was the physical embodiment of quiet expensive power. The walls were a deep charcoal gray, adorned with abstract art that was likely worth more than his Camry. The air was still, smelling faintly of leather and old books. Evelyn herself was a striking black woman in her late 50s, with her hair in a sleek silver bob and her eyes holding a sharp, analytical intelligence. She wore an $8,700 Armani suit, the fabric draping perfectly, a silent testament to her success. She did not waste time on pleasantries. "Mr. Washington," she began, her voice a low, modulated instrument of control. "Maria gave me a brief overview. Your wife has filed for divorce. She is operating under the assumption that your annual income is $135,000 and your assets are negligible. Tell me everything." For the next hour, Isaiah laid it all out. He spoke with the calm, methodical clarity of an engineer describing a system. He explained the 2-year marriage, the carefully constructed facade of his financial life, Nia's growing dissatisfaction, and the final brutal conversation on Saturday night. He didn't editorialize or inject emotion. He just gave her the facts. Then he opened his briefcase. He slid a thin file across the vast mahogany desk. "These are the relevant documents." Evelyn opened the file. Inside were the Articles of Incorporation for InfraSense, dated 4 years ago, a full 24 months before he had even met Nia. Next were the seed funding agreements, showing his initial personal investment of $250,000, money he'd made from stock options at his previous job. Then came his founder's share agreement, detailing his 40% equity stake. Finally, there was a summary of the Series C funding round that had closed last Friday, signed and executed. It included the new post-money valuation of the company, $200,000. Evelyn read through the documents, her expression unreadable. She paused on the valuation page, her eyes scanning the numbers. She looked up at him, a flicker of something, not surprise, but assessment in her gaze. "Your personal stake in InfraSense," she stated, not asked, "is currently valued at $80 million. "That's correct," Isaiah said, "and you founded the company entirely with your own premarital assets 2 years before the wedding." "Correct." Evelyn leaned back in her high-backed leather chair, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. "Mr. Washington," she said, her voice dropping a register, "this is not a divorce case. This is a public service announcement." She explained the law to him with crystalline clarity. Colorado is an equitable distribution state, not a community property state. The law makes a clear distinction between marital property and separate property. Your company, founded and funded before the marriage, is the very definition of separate property. It is yours. Period. She continued, "Your wife's attorney might try to argue that the appreciation in the company's value during the 2 years of marriage is a marital asset. It's a common tactic. However, we will argue that this appreciation was not due to any marital effort, but to market forces and the work you and your team did, work that began long before she was in the picture. Given the stealth nature of your work and her complete lack of involvement or even knowledge of the company, their claim will be exceptionally weak. We will bleed them dry on discovery before they even get near a judge." She outlined the strategy. They would do nothing. They would wait for the petition from Nia's lawyer, who was likely some low-cost attorney she found online. They would let them make their standard demands based on the $135,000 salary. And then, at the appropriate moment, they would respond with Isaiah's full financial disclosure. "It will be like dropping a bomb into a tea party," Evelyn said, a glint in her eye. "Her lawyer will likely have to recuse himself for malpractice if he doesn't immediately tell her to accept our terms." "And what are our terms?" Isaiah asked. "Our terms are simple," Evelyn said, closing the file. "She is entitled to half of the marital property. That is the $18,450 in the joint savings account. We will offer her that, plus, as a gesture of goodwill, All the furniture and art in the loft, which I estimate is worth around $150,000. She keeps her car. You keep the loft, which is in the trust. And you, of course, keep your company. It will be a clean, surgical cut. She will receive a settlement that is, by any normal standard, generous, but I suspect it will not be what she is expecting. Isaiah felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It was done. The system was being rebooted. And what about the Bloomberg piece tomorrow? Evelyn's smile widened. The timing is exquisite. Let her read about the life she threw away in the paper, along with the rest of the world. It will make our position that much stronger. She will be negotiating from a position of public humiliation. Checkmate. Tuesday morning arrived with the quiet hum of inevitability. At 6:47 a.m., Isaiah's phone, sitting on the granite countertop of his kitchen, began to vibrate. It didn't stop for the next 2 hours. He ignored it. He was standing by the window of his loft, drinking a cup of simple black coffee from a plain white mug, watching the sun rise over the city. He had already read the article. The headline was stark and powerful. Denver's InfraSense AI closes 200 meters Series C. Founder Isaiah Washington quietly builds an industry titan. The piece was flattering, a testament to 4 years of relentless, under-the-radar work. It detailed their groundbreaking technology in predictive infrastructure management, a field he had essentially invented. It quoted investors who called him a once-in-a-generation visionary. And it featured a photo of him, taken a week ago in his office. He was wearing a dark, well-fitted suit, looking directly at the camera, his expression calm, confident, and completely in control. He looked like a man who knew exactly who he was and what he had built. He looked nothing like the man Naya thought she had left. The story was the strike. It was the quiet, coordinated action that would change everything, and he wouldn't have to say a single word. Miles away, in a sterile, white-walled apartment in Cherry Creek North she had leased for an exorbitant $4,500 a month, Naya was having brunch with her friend Chloe. She was holding court, sipping a mimosa, likely recounting a curated, tragic version of her breakup. She was the victim, the woman who had bravely left her unambitious husband to seek a life of fulfillment. She was building her new narrative. Her phone buzzed on the table, then again and again. It was a group chat with her friends, the ones whose lavish lifestyles she so desperately coveted. Chloe picked up her own phone. "Oh my God," she whispered, her eyes wide. "Naya, you have to see this." She slid her phone across the table. Naya picked it up, a look of annoyance on her face, which quickly dissolved into confusion, then utter, bone-deep shock. She saw the headline. She saw the photo of Isaiah, a man transformed by context from a simple systems architect into a titan of industry. Her eyes scanned the text, snagging on the numbers, the incomprehensible strings of zeros. $200 million. Founder and CEO. The mimosa glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. Her face, which she had so carefully composed that morning with over $300 worth of La Mer foundation and Dior makeup, went completely white. The world had not just tilted on its axis, it had inverted. In a single blinding flash of public information, she was no longer the woman who had left a man for being not enough. She was the woman who had thrown away an $80 million lottery ticket. The fool. The cautionary tale. The humiliation was instant, public, and absolute. She fumbled for her own phone, her hands trembling. She dialed Isaiah's number. It went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. She sent a text. "Isaiah, I just saw an article. We need to talk. This has to be a mistake." No reply. The second part of the strike was already in motion. At 9 a.m. sharp, a courier delivered a package to the office of Naya's divorce attorney, a man named Gary, who ran a small practice out of a strip mall and charged a flat $5,000 fee for uncontested divorces. Inside was the official response from Reed and Associates. It contained Isaiah's full, legally mandated financial disclosure. Page after page of brokerage accounts, trust documents, and the full audited valuation of his stake in InfraSense. The cover letter, drafted by Evelyn, was a masterpiece of polite legal brutality. It acknowledged receipt of their petition and formally presented their settlement offer, half the joint savings account, the contents of the loft, and nothing more. It cited the Colorado statutes on separate property and concluded, "We consider this matter to be straightforward and trust we can bring it to a swift and amicable conclusion." Isaiah didn't see any of this happen. He didn't have to. He was in his office, leading a meeting, but Maria kept him informed. The calls started at 9:35 a.m. Naya's number appeared on his office line. Maria answered with practiced calm. "Isaiah Washington's office? I need to speak to him. It's his wife, Naya." "I'm sorry, Mr. Washington is in meetings all day. I can take a message." Naya left a message. Then another and another. The voicemails, which Maria transcribed for the legal record, told the story of her complete and utter collapse. A real-time disintegration played out in 1-minute increments. 9:37 a.m. Confusion. "Isaiah, it's me. I don't understand what's going on. Why won't you answer my calls? I just saw an article. We need to talk. This has to be a mistake. Call me." 10:15 a.m. Justification and anger. "Okay, I don't understand why you're not answering. If this is true, why did you lie to me for 2 years? We're married. This is our money. You can't just hide something like this. This changes everything." 11:30 a.m. Horror and pleading. Her lawyer had clearly called her. "My lawyer just called me. He said your lawyer sent a letter. He said they claim it's all yours." "No, that's not possible. Isaiah, please. We can fix this. I love you. I made a terrible mistake. I was just scared. Please just talk to me." 1:45 p.m. Threats. "You think you can just cut me out? After everything? I decorated that loft. I supported you emotionally. I was your wife. You will not do this to me. I will tell everyone what a liar you are. I will take you for everything." 3 p.m. Total breakdown sobbing. "You don't understand what I gave up. All my friends, they're all talking about it. You've ruined my life. Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Just, please call me back." Isaiah read the transcriptions in a single email that evening. He felt nothing. It was like reading a bug report. The system was purging its errors. The noise was loud, but it was outside the gate. Inside, there was only silence. The consequences for Naya cascaded with brutal efficiency. Her world, built on a foundation of perceived status and future wealth, crumbled into dust. Each downfall was a direct and measurable result of her own choices. First came the legal collapse. Her strip mall lawyer Gary called her after receiving the disclosure from Evelyn Reed's office. He was panicked. "Naya, you didn't tell me your husband was Isaiah Washington of InfraSense," he'd stammered. "Their lawyer is Evelyn Reed. Evelyn Reed. Do you understand? I can't go up against her. No one can. Their position is ironclad. The company is separate property. You need to take the settlement." Naya, in her rage and denial, fired him. She tried to retain a high-powered downtown firm, the kind that advertised in glossy magazines. A senior partner met with her, listened to her story, and then politely explained that to take on a case against Evelyn Reed with such a weak claim would require a non-refundable retainer of $100,000. Nia had less than $3,000 to her name. She had no choice but to crawl back to Gary, who finalized the divorce on the exact terms Evelyn had offered. The financial consequences were swift and severe. The final settlement awarded her exactly $9,025. her half of the joint savings account. She was given 30 days to remove her personal belongings and the furniture from the loft. The reality of her situation began to set in. The $4,500 a month lease on her new apartment was a crushing weight. The balance on her American Express card, which she had used to finance her new life in anticipation of a multi-million-dollar settlement, was $47,800. The monthly payments on her white BMW 3 Series were $680. Within a month, she was forced to sell the car for $32,000 to a dealership, just enough to cover the loan and pay off a fraction of her credit card debt. She was left driving a 10-year-old Honda Civic she bought for $8,000 cash. But the most devastating fallout was social. The Bloomberg article had made Isaiah a local celebrity. The story of his quiet, stealth-mode success was inspiring, and inevitably the story of their divorce became the city's most delicious piece of gossip. In the circles Naya so desperately wanted to join, she was now a pariah. She wasn't seen as a woman who had been wronged. She was seen as a laughingstock, a cautionary tale about greed and poor judgment. The private equity partner, Marcus, who had been whispering promises of Aspen and St. Bart's, ghosted her completely. Her calls went unanswered, her texts unread. Her friends, like Chloe, suddenly became distant. Their invitations to charity galas and exclusive restaurant openings dried up. To be seen with Naya was to be associated with her colossal, embarrassing failure. She had tried to trade up, and in the process had devalued herself to zero. Isaiah witnessed none of this directly. He heard whispers from mutual acquaintances, which he politely ignored. He instructed Maria to block her number from all his phones and her email from all his inboxes. He was moving forward. His life was accelerating, filled with board meetings, product launches, and new possibilities. Her life, meanwhile, was in a catastrophic spiral, a system failure of her own design. She had wanted a man with real money, and in the end, she was left with none. A year passed. The city of Denver moved through its seasons, the snows of winter giving way to the brilliant, sun-drenched days of summer. For Isaiah, it was a year of profound growth and quiet rebuilding. The noise of his old life faded, replaced by the satisfying hum of purpose. He kept the loft in Cherry Creek. For the first few months, it had felt like a museum of a failed marriage, every object a memory of Naya's taste and her ambitions. One weekend, he had a team of movers come. They carefully packed up the $12,000 Roche-Beaubois sofa, the $8,000 abstract painting, the cold, minimalist furniture she had so carefully selected. He donated it all to a charity that helped furnish homes for families transitioning out of homelessness. He refurnished the space himself. He bought a deep, comfortable leather couch for $6,000, the kind you could sink into for hours. He built floor-to-ceiling bookshelves from dark walnut and filled them with hundreds of books. His collection of classic science fiction, biographies of great engineers, and volumes of technical manuals that were like poetry to him. The loft was no longer a showroom. It was a home. It was his. The true change, however, was not in his surroundings, but in his focus. The success of InfraSense was assured. He had a brilliant executive team managing the day-to-day operations. He found a new passion, one that connected him back to the thrill of the early days. He started an incubator within the company, a small, well-funded program called InfraSense Launchpad, dedicated to mentoring and seed funding startups founded by underrepresented engineers. He was in the Launchpad conference room now, a bright, airy space with whiteboards for walls. Across from him sat three young, brilliant black engineers, two women and a man, all in their mid-20s. Their energy was electric, a mixture of nerves and fierce intelligence. They were pitching him their idea for a new decentralized data storage protocol. He listened intently, his expression serious but encouraging. He saw himself in them, the hunger, the audacity, the belief in the power of a single, elegant idea. Your architecture is sound, he told them, but your scaling model has a flaw. He stood up, picked up a marker, and began to sketch on the whiteboard, his hand moving with practiced ease. If you reroute your data packets through a tertiary node like this, you eliminate the bottleneck. The three young founders watched, their eyes wide with understanding. He wasn't just giving them money, he was giving them his time, his experience. He was giving them a piece of himself. This, he realized, was true wealth. It wasn't the number on a stock certificate. It was the transfer of knowledge, the cultivation of potential. Later that evening, as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the city, Isaiah took a walk through Cheeseman Park. The light illuminated the deep brown of his skin, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the old elm trees. He felt a sense of peace that had eluded him for years. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't angry. He had forgiven Naya, not for her sake, but for his own. He had let go of the weight of her judgment. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a worn, folded piece of paper. It was a cocktail napkin from a diner, the paper soft and thin from years of being carried. On it, sketched in blue ballpoint pen, was a crude diagram of servers and data flows. It was the first drawing of the InfraSense architecture, an idea he had mapped out with his father over a plate of greasy fries 5 years ago. His father, a retired postal worker who had saved every extra dollar to help Isaiah through college, hadn't understood the technical details, but he had understood the fire in his son's eyes. "Whatever it is, son," he had said, clapping him on the back, "you build it good and strong." His father was gone now, but his belief remained. That napkin was Isaiah's anchor. It was worth more than the $80 million it had eventually become, because it represented the real foundation of his success: love, belief, and the courage to build something true. Nia had wanted real money, but she had never understood what was real. Real wasn't the price tag on a dress or the address of a vacation home. Real was the idea on a napkin. Real was the trust of a team, the pride of a mother, the potential in a new generation. Real was character. He had been the richest man in every room they had ever entered together. She just hadn't been able to see it. He folded the napkin carefully and put it back in his wallet. He turned his face to the last rays of the setting sun and walked on, a man who had built his world, lost it, and built it again, this time on a foundation that could never be shaken. True wealth is never what you have, but what you build. It's the character you forge in the quiet years and the integrity you hold on to when the world is watching. What do you think is the most valuable thing a person can build in their life? Share your thoughts below. And let's continue the conversation about what truly matters: